Hey, good morning, YouTube. What's going on? It's Monday. About the most we can say about that, right? Hey, welcome. Thanks for checking in. We'll see what's going on out here. The weather. You got a huge storm right there in the middle of everything out there. You can see it makes like what is that, an upside down U or something? Last night when I checked on that was like almost like a mini hurricane. It was like kind of in more of a circle shape, like the little tail coming off of it. Looked quite intense. Some yellows and reds. You can see there's a little bit of yellow still in there. Anybody in Iowa, Illinois, all those places, you're probably getting very, very wet, and probably will be moving to the east today. And then you got it's like some thunderstorms down in Mississippi and Louisiana, Arkansas area. With some bright red and yellow too. So watch out for tornadoes, I would imagine. Pretty good weather and rain up in Montana. 01 Crom's probably pulling out his high waters, if he has any. Surprised it's not snow by now. So how was everybody's weekend? We survived. It's about the best statement you can make, right? Survive the weekend. But so quite a bit of wet weather across the country. Still nothing out here. We just hit Reno just hit record days over 100, I guess, for the year. Like it wasn't consecutive, but just I guess they were over 100 yesterday. It did not feel like it was that hot yesterday. I don't know. Maybe I'm just getting too used to it. And I guess today, if is expected to be over 90, will be the most consecutive days over 90 since last year. Guess we broke that record last year. We're set to break it again. So a little hot still out here in the West. Well, the rest of you are mostly getting more water than you know what to do with. And some more is coming. Hey, good morning, Long. How you doing? Yeah, more water coming your way, it looks like. Depending on how I guess that could go north of you, but it looks like it's still got a pretty good middle section that will bring some rain your way. So, moving on, just checking in real quick. The wildfire situation has gotten a little bit better. The Yosemite fire has been contained. What they call the Ferguson fire. Completely contained as of yesterday. It's 97,000 acres. So I guess we can spare the Yosemite Valley at least. 2 firefighters were killed while fighting this fire. So I guess the park will reopen. The main Central Valley, Yosemite Valley, there was shut down for nearly 3 weeks, and it was reopened. Okay, the main park reopened last Tuesday. We must have missed that, but there's probably no way they can make up for that lost revenue in the local towns there from basically the bulk part of the tourist season into July and whatnot. Everybody's going back to school and stuff now. That's a big economic hit they're going to take. Don't see any updates on any other fires. I was trying to see an update on the Reading fire to see what was going on at the end of that, but it didn't pop up in the search at all. But I think it's been contained and everything. It's just a matter of time of getting everything out and checked. So quick check in there on that. It's good news overall, but it has been a rough summer for a lot of communities on this whole deal. With still a couple months of prime fire season still coming forward. All right, moving on. Oh, where to go next? This is a interesting story that is just baffles me, and I wanted to check in when it said that this Russian supposed agent is supposedly facing torture in the U.S. And it's just interesting because the news doesn't ever care when any American gets in prison and is basically in solitary confinement in torturous conditions, um, especially pretrial confinement, not guilty till proven innocent, right? Um, but this Russian lady who was accused of infiltrating and delving in politics, um, she's accused of acting as a Russian agent while developing ties with American citizens and infiltrating political groups. Isn't that like every immigrant that comes to America has developed ties with American citizens and infiltrates political groups? I don't know. But Russia has accused the United States of trying to break the spirit of the woman in jail, and she's being subject to borderline torture. So it's a Russian accusation. Um, why this is continually they keep saying gun rights advocate when that's obviously just part of the cover, right? Why do they keep saying that like she's part of the NRA and like this big it's the words they're inserting here are concerning in the accusations that they're trying to make that tie between Russians and gun advocates, like the NRA and the Russians are hand in hand or something. The media is trying really hard to just continue to divide people among groups to get emotional responses out of people. This is a Reuters article, I guess, in CNBC. Yeah, Reuters. Kind of doing a disservice there with some of the verbiage they're putting in here to stoke people's emotions, it seems. Because all the Americans that get put in solitary confinement pre-trial doesn't seem to concern the media. They never bring it up. Of course, the Russians brought this up, so maybe it's because the foreign government finally got involved. Is not an American citizen, but they suddenly care. While at the same time, they say Russia is pretty much undermining the whole country. But yeah, they're saying she's in solitary confinement and is being used to try to break her. I wonder what prison she's in. She would be in a federal prison, right? Doesn't say where she's at. But we know the tactics that the feds use. I mean, look what they did to the Bundys and others. But media won't cover when Americans are essentially in the same or worse position. and the abusive prison system is allowed to continue to march forward. Yeah, it just says she was transferred from a prison in Washington to one in Virginia. I was assume that means Washington D.C. I don't think they put her in Washington State, but maybe they did because she was operating out of the Maryland D.C. area, right? Just found that headline interesting, and that the media picks up on things like that and uses and calls her a gun advocate when obviously wasn't that part of her cover. If she's supposedly an agent trying to infiltrate, it wasn't like her real persona, like her real agenda. They just give her a pass to get Americans emotionally charged about the whole thing, obviously to divide us, I think. Media not doing anybody any favors with that type of stuff. So moving on, for today's sign of the apocalypse, if you hadn't seen it, this had been out a little bit already in different places as Sweden was doing this in a company, and there's other different things like this that have happened, but more of it's happening, and it's just people don't. I don't know. It's like people think that they're edgy and just disproving prophecy if they think they do participate in something like this, I guess. Because I don't know of anybody my age that isn't aware of the whole mark of the beast and not being able to trade taking a mark in your hand or head. But at Wisconsin, well, it's a technology firm, so I guess that's why. They've injected 80 employees with their own brand of RFID microchips over the last year. So this has been ongoing. This was in the MIT Technology Review, and the company, they love it. Yeah, they don't lose their ID card, so they never have to swipe. You know, there's all tons of benefits, I'm sure. There's tons of big what's the word? Convenience. There's tons of convenience in this, I'm sure. Until they start using it to track you and control you. But that would never happen. No, that would never happen, right? So there you can see the implant. The same thing that's found in debit cards and key fobs and smartphones. Is technology considered passive, meaning the microchip stores data that can be read by another device, but cannot read data itself. It's like they insert here's a prime example of just inserting a sentence for their own edginess or for their own reveal. Are they just trying to say it this way to be funny, or yeah, they made the sentence. You'd have to ask them why they worded it this way. The chip's applications are devilishly simple. Gee, I mean, it's simple. You're right. It's that easy. The possibilities are seemingly endless. Cashless commerce, providing first responders with detailed medical information in the event of emergency. Endless possibilities. Yeah, you can't make this stuff up. It's just like they have to reveal themselves so that you will accept them. If you accept them, then they feel better about it. But there's a prime example of where the mandates might come from with the medical information. They'll say it's for everybody's safety that you have this, because that way you can be treated quickly for your diabetes or allergic reactions to penicillin or whatever. First responders can treat you accordingly. Tons of excuses they can use on this to make it mandatory for your safety, of course. The vice president of the company, Steve Cassert, has said, "It's just become such a part of my routine." who was miffed when the RFID reader on the vending machine went down a couple of months ago. Yeah, they program you to think this thing is such a convenience, and they get mad when the technology around it doesn't work. We are so screwed. People are just buying into it, and they're gonna it's leading to our own destruction. And move on to concerns about security, such as the fact that concerns over security include the fact that anyone with an RFID reader can cozy up to a chipped individual and ping their implant to glean personal information, kind of like what they do with debit cards and credit cards now. Identity theft and credit card fraud and stuff happens on the daily with those. That's why they have those new secure wallets and such things, um, to prevent that type of cozying up to you to get your information. But that should be a concern pretty much with everything, between the swipe readers that get put on ATMs and everything else. Here's a diagram of how these microchips work. So all about security and safety, I'm sure. All about security and safety. Europe's already had the program for a while. We talked about the Swedes last year. Yeah. 3,000 Swedes have implanted tiny microchips beneath their skin to replace credit card information, identification keys, train tickets, among other everyday items. How do you update your RFID chip? It says it can't receive information, it only transmits. Um, so you'd have to remove it to update, I guess, to when if you change banks or you get a new train ticket. I don't know. You move jobs, you need a new key to the office, you need a new swipe card. So they're gonna be taking them in and out. They haven't talked about removing them. Yeah, talking about personal security concerns, and it's the Swedes example. It Man, yeah. It's all for your convenience. Go get one. Yay. The beast is here. Enjoy. That's about the most you can say about that. And people are just loving it. So that's your sign of the apocalypse. When the real apocalypse is occurring, I'll go side chat here. Hey, Alicia Cleggs joined us this morning. How you doing? Good morning. Thanks for checking in. It's past your get up and go time. I figured you'd be out and about. Thanks for checking in. Um, Says they need to write a law saying no business can require RFID chips. Yeah, but are they going to do that? Uh, People need to just say no if they say they are required. They need to. I don't think they can get away with mandating it for a bit. I mean, mandating you change something in your person. I don't know how that would work in the court of law. If somebody was to say no, you can't require me to have this, because the company can say it's just part of our regulations. Yeah, unless there was a law written, but it's just it's inevitable. I think it's the whole sifting of the wheat, and people just are oblivious. I think so. Um, More laws aren't going to help anything. People's own ignorance and inability to see what's going on is our problem. Foolish employees that buy into this and go along with it, even volunteer for it, is a problem. You know, but Yeah, so sign of the apocalypse. And moving on to the ongoing collapse. Venezuela revalued their currency last night, and there's several stories that popped up overnight about it. This headline is like almost the most obvious thing. Venezuela's massive currency devaluation is a scam and does nothing to ease its economic crisis. Well, that's the duh moment of the year right there. I mean, people have been talking about that for a long time, but yeah, that happened overnight. They had the ATM or the bank holiday yesterday, so everything should be fine in Venezuela today, but it doesn't appear to work that way. I mean, I can't find live streams or nothing out of there. If anybody knows of a live stream, let me know. It'd be cool to see what's going on. Although there's probably not a whole lot of anything going on. Probably everybody staying home, concerned that, well, they can't buy gas. They can't, all the costs associated with the regular economic activity. People probably don't want to go out and try to incur any costs trying to figure out how this thing's going to work. Only those that really, really have to spend money are probably doing it because the value of things is so off whack now. So the new banknotes are issued today are basically they take off 5 zeros from their currency. I don't know how they're going to do paper currency that's already in the circulation. Just not recognize it, or just say, hey, deduct the 5 zeros off that. Store owners and everybody. I mean, you can imagine the countryside, a lot of places, there may be places that people don't even realize how much this valuation is going on, but they have, a couple bills tucked away, for safekeeping or whatever. And it's funny because just 2 weeks ago, the president was like, turn in your gold and silver for their currency so we can, save the country and everything. Yeah, they suck you in with that bet, and then they revalue the currency to screw even more. It's like, what kind of trap is that? Yeah, there was a lot of people changing for other currencies and gold and silver and stuff, and they were trying to get people to turn in those things to get the currency so they could save the economy. Looks like a lot of people checking in the side room here. Aaron Cox is with us. Good morning. How you doing? Are you in Salt Lake City too? Okay, cool. Or are you just saying hello to Alicia? Caregiver, how you doing? Good morning. Haven't seen you in a while. People don't say no. They do as their authority says they have to. Right, but they haven't told them they have to in these cases. Almost every one of them, it's a trial, volunteers just come and we're testing out this new security process. They always sugarcoat it. They never like, you will get this or else you won't. They haven't yet, at least, I don't think. Maybe in Sweden they have, but that American company, it's all been voluntary to this point, I believe, and everybody just loves it. It's so good, but better get your real ID, right? Yeah, better get your real ID, or don't, because I won't. It doesn't matter. It's such a joke because they say you have to have the federal ID to fly, but they won't take it, or they yeah. Anyway, the things like where they try to use it, it's like they don't even know their own processes. It's so backwards and upside down. My state ID clearly says on it now, not for federal use, and that's the only one they will take. They won't take any other ID, which is a real ID in their eyes. It's just funny how they don't know their own process. So this is the let's see if I got video. This is from 42 minutes ago, so maybe this is updated today. massive currency devaluation adds to the chaos, which, yeah, it's been pretty chaotic as we've seen. To what this.
How does government healthcare state defense go beyond sweat protection? Please. For anti-stain and anti-mark protection.
The banks there are closed today as the leadership tries another round of what they call economic reforms. Becky mentioned the massive devaluation. They're also going to introduce a new currency, which removes 5 zeros from the biggest bill as the country suffers from hyperinflation, which some economists say is now worse than it ever was in the Weimar Republic. The largest bill is a 100,000 Bolivar note. It's worth 3 US cents. A cup of coffee is reported to cost 2 million bolivars. So they're going to change that. They're also going to raise the minimum wage by more than 1,000% and raise gasoline prices to international levels to combat smuggling. You know, it's subsidized. So if you can get it to Colombia, you can sell it for a lot more. The Syria-like border crisis with its neighbors is worsening. Millions are trying to flee what some are now calling the Somalia of Latin America. It's not clear what's going to finally force change there. The government clings to socialist beliefs of price controls and also state control of resources. Wall Street Journal reporting Goldman Sachs is facing losses on its heavily criticized purchase of Venezuelan bonds from last year. Goldman bought them at 31 cents on the dollar. In June, they marked them at 18 cents on the dollar, so they're probably worth less now.
So who owns those bonds? Aren't they in their mutual funds?
Yes, exactly. So remember, Volcker rule doesn't permit, banks themselves to actually take positions. So they bought these, and then they were sold to clients, and they're sitting in a lot of individual accounts. So the clients would have taken on the risk of that.
When was the last time, how long ago was Venezuela kind of a country where you could visit it? It was before Chavez, I guess? Was it?
You could visit it up until, under what sort of, like, you mean when it was safe or when America?
No, what I'm getting to is, when was the minimum wage not $1 a month? What was the best it ever was? They're getting to $30 a month. What was the best it ever was? Was it ever $200 a month, or was it ever a normal, like, Western, kind of what you'd think of as something in the Americas? Was it ever 5,000?
So this descent into chaos definitely started under Chavez. The problem you had in Venezuela for a long time, which was true for a lot of Latin America still, is you had the very rich and the very poor and no middle class. Venezuela has suffered from having too much oil. Countries that have too much oil, we have seen often make very bad decisions because they have so much
as
money.
much because there's nobody who will invest to get the oil out of the ground.
Because you're going to still own
2 million
it.
barrels.
You can't take a risk.
They were supposed to be at 6 million barrels per day. I mean, it's pathetic.
But does everyone know it's a living wage? No, that it's $1. I read $1 a month. And that struck me. I didn't realize just right down in Venezuela.
It's hard to do apples to apples because they've had massive devaluations and hyperinflation. Maybe that particular amount of bolivars at one point was actually a livable wage, right? But now it's been devalued so much.
But they're only going to $30 a month.
Right, and that'll be worthless. I mean, they keep raising the minimum wage because inflation is so bad.
If you're right.
You want to. I'm very curious where we get this number from because you can't get it out of Venezuela directly. It used to be a guy at Home Depot who would quote the traders down in Cucuta, Colombia, where they trade on the street. And that's
why at Home Depot?
Yeah, a guy at Home Depot used to run it during his lunch break. I'm not kidding.
All right, so there's some of the devaluation news from today. Obviously, like they mentioned, a long-standing process. With that devaluation. Where's that coming from? So this is a key part of it. In reality, nothing changes. Economics professor John Hopkins said, in the absence of a dramatic shift in the country's economic policy, Maduro's currency devaluation is meaningless. Right. Because people just adjust the numbers. The numbers don't mean anything, right? So as an example of how this worked, the government tightened controls for currency exchange after Maduro took over in 2013, basically restricting Venezuela's access to dollars and other currencies. This further increased the number of bolivars available and provoked a decrease in imported goods. Lower imports boosted domestic prices, thus taking inflation to record levels. According to data from the United Nations, last May, over 1.5 million have left since 2004 or 2014, and we've had articles in the last week where they estimate 2.3 million is where that number's at, going to neighboring countries and elsewhere. So, yeah, they have those problems. There's another interesting story. Brazil sending troops to the border after clashes at the Venezuela border, which is not going to be pleasant for anybody. We've documented the border issues between there and Colombia and the Venezuela and Guyana over the last month. And this all has to do with migrants and the refugee basically status. Residents in the border town of Pacaraima clashed violently with Venezuelan migrants, driving them out of makeshift camps. Large numbers of people coming to suck resources and jobs and stuff out of your neighborhood, and you know they're fleeing. It's causing conflict for sure. And this is just posted 8 hours ago. This is what's a .za email, or is that South? Is that New Zealand? I can't remember. Anyway, this paper's somewhere else. It's not the EU, or it's not America. I can't remember if it's Australia or New Zealand or. But anyway, Brazil's president called for an emergency meeting after ordering troops to the border of Venezuela as regional tensions build over the exodus from the crisis-hit neighbor. The situation in Pacaraima, something like that. Goodness. I was saying the other day I need to work on my Chinese and Russian. I guess I need to work on my Spanish too. Is on the opposite side of the border to the Venezuelan town of Santa Elena de Orayan. Situation was calm following Saturday's violence, in large part because almost all the Venezuelans had been forced out. More than 1,200 Venezuelan migrants returned to Venezuela. That was probably not a pleasant experience. On average, 500 Venezuelans crossed daily into Brazil, but on Sunday, the flow was much lower than the previous days. Well, you got to figure if they didn't have cash on hand or some other way to pay, they weren't moving on Sunday because, again, all the ATMs, all the banks were closed. There was no way to pay for any goods or services if you didn't already have something in hand. And everybody was probably holding on to their stuff that they did have because they're not sure what's going to happen today with this new currency. Again, what does that old currency hold? People that are holding dollars. Because the only change to the zeros is the new stuff and everything electronically. All the stuff currently physical in hand, are they just going to ignore it? Just tell the shop owners again, they haven't talked about that, like how that process would work. Because it probably won't work because it's going to be chaos. Like think of, this event, Venezuela has some fairly modern conveniences, I guess you'd say, modern technology, cash readers, when you go to put cash in a machine that reads it or various things. How do they change that? Like a soda machine. I'm sure they have dollar reading soda machines still there. does that change overnight? Are they able to reprogram that stuff overnight all around the country? I'm not sure how that works when you talk about selling, people that are actually trying to sell and be in business and using things like that. The Public Security Ministry in Brazil announced it was sending a contingent of 120 troops as well as health specialists to join teams in the area on Monday. Tens of thousands of Venezuelans have crossed the border into Brazil over the past 3 years, which is interesting. Brazil is one of the more advanced countries, I guess you'd say. But you'd think I think we found in one of the others that most of the Brazilians are going into Ecuador or Colombia. They weren't necessarily fleeing to the most prosperous areas. But Brazil has had its own problems over the last couple of years as well. So the latest tensions that began early Saturday after a local merchant was robbed and severely beaten in an incident blamed on Venezuela and some suspects. So you're going to get into a lot of that. People just point the blame at the easy victim, not necessarily making it true. But I'm sure tensions are high. Ecuador and Peru tightened border control. Tensions are rising all over in Latin America with migration triggered in Venezuela and in Nicaragua, as they note. Daniel Ortega is still the president of Nicaragua. Holy cow. Been around forever. Peru and Ecuador are halting immigrants at the border, requiring they present passports, which many lack, instead of identity cards. So they're not taking a normal personal ID, kind of like we go to Canada, where we used to. I don't know if you still can or not. Used to, you could just show an ID, right? American ID. Now, here in Peru and Ecuador, they're requiring passports. I think to go to Canada and Mexico, you can still only show an ID, right? Or you have to have a passport now. Restricting movement. Last week alone, 20,000 Venezuelans entered Peru. On Sunday, 18 undocumented Venezuelans were detained in the capital of Lima, according to police. Wait, if you do that in the United States, you're racist. I guess those Peruvians haven't caught on to that notion yet. Previously, applications were open to Venezuelans who entered Peru by December 31st, but the deadline was June 30th, 2019. But now only Venezuelans who enter Peru by 31 October can apply and have until December 31st to do so. That's for a temporary work permit. Sorry, I skipped over the previous. So yeah, you can go in. They could go into Peru for a work permit. There was a deadline for next year, but they bumped that back to October 31st. Probably far exceeding their measures they need. In San Jose, Costa Rica, hundreds of people took part in sometimes violent protests Saturday using Nazi symbols to repudiate Nicaraguan migrants. Nicaraguan migrants fleeing months of deadly unrest face similar difficulties. Yeah, lots of unrest, lots of places. Sorry about the side chat. Check in here. We got people checking in. Socialize harder. Yeah, socialize harder. Right, Alicia? Well, yeah, taking silver off the streets has lots of side effects, Aaron. Most notably is it's just like when FDR did it. It's to eliminate the competition monetarily. Castaway's with us. Good morning or good evening for you. Ecuador will be next, you say? It could be anywhere in South America, I believe, the way things are going. I could talk about Nicaragua, other places in Central America as well. No, Alicia, I don't think too much oil is a problem. It's their mismanagement. and their central control of their oil is their problem. And they're so far down the line now that it's not going to. It's I don't know how they're going to reverse this. Ecuador is in bad shape. I guess Weimar Germany is our only example of something this bad. Or Zimbabwe. I guess we have Zimbabwe as an example, but Zimbabwe wasn't as advanced as Venezuela was when it started its decline. There was also another article, I thought. Yeah, there's also a Zero Hedge article. As well. That was published last night. And that they talked about, we briefly talked about it the other night. They're trying to tie a cryptocurrency to their oil now as a respect. And I was hypothesizing the other night in the chat that it might be a test run. I mean, conspiracy-minded people abound. So, but Venezuela could be a test case on how you transition from a physical currency to a cryptocurrency. And they're just looking at seeing how the people take it and how it gets implemented to spread that disease elsewhere, to mandate the use of cryptocurrencies in other countries. But you pretty much eliminate the usefulness and the ability to use paper money, and you just further bring people over to the use of only electronic currencies, I guess you'd say. I don't know why we say crypto. I mean, we've had electronic currency for so long. It's just the crypto is a new cool thing because of the whole, well, you have this ledger and it's trackable and it's all certified, like that means anything. It's like the only difference between cryptocurrency and your bank statement is the supposed technology that tracks the cryptocurrency. Like, doesn't my bank track all this electronic transactions? I don't know. If it's in a computer, it's pretty much worthless. But yeah, this talks about the devaluation. I'm running behind on time here. Hey, Rooster, good morning. Good morning. How you doing? Yeah, you caught us, Rooster. You caught us. You just watched a millennial couple get run over and killed in Afghanistan? What in the world? It's here on YouTube. Wait, are you talking about the people that were riding bikes across the world to prove that people aren't evil or there's no evil exists? Everybody's good. We were just all propaganda that there's all this evil in the world. Is that what you're talking about, Rooster? I thought they were in Tajikistan. I've heard a couple different things now, I guess. But anyway, you figured somewhere between, Mongolia and Istanbul, that would probably happen. It wouldn't take much in any of those countries. As soon as you're identified as being who you are, it wouldn't take long for the word to get out. But some people refuse to accept reality. So the new money is called the Sovereign Bolivar and will be used. This is the crypto we're talking about, or the new currency, and will be based on the petro, which is valued at $60 or 3,600 Sovereign Bolivars. After the redenomination for today, planned for today, the slashes 5 zeros off the national currency. The minimum wage will be set at half that, 1,800 Sovereign Bolivars, which is what they're talking about in the CNBC article of $30. The minimum wage in Venezuela is $30. It goes to show you, minimum wages don't work. Like, that's not going to cause inflation, right? The government would cover the minimum wage increase at small and medium-sized companies for 90 days, the president added. It's not clear what happens after that. Yeah, everybody goes broke. Nobody can afford $30 minimum wages in America, a little less in Venezuela. So Maduro explains that he is, in quote, they've dollarized our prices. I'm petrolizing salaries and petrolizing prices. His words are not mine. Petrolizing. That's got to be a made-up word, right? We are going to convert the petro into the reference that pegs the entire economy's movements, which is, kind of like having a gold-backed currency, but he needs to get his oil firms working if he's going to do that and get some actual value behind it. In other words, for the first time ever, an oil-linked cryptocurrency effectively replaces the sovereign currency. Again, there's that tie to crypto that they're trying to put in. Is it a test case, would be my question. As a result, the petro, which will fluctuate dramatically, will be used to set prices for goods. The package of measures combine the necessary with the baffling. A Caracas-based pollster posted on Friday this quote: "The government has recognized the need to anchor the economy to an external variable outside of its control, such as the international price of oil. A wise decision, but it does so by hiding it in a vehicle that suffers from lack of confidence and viability, such as the petro." So Maduro's quoting, moving on here in his statement, "You won't find the IMF's clause or ill-gotten prescriptions here." Maduro further said no experts were involved who do not feel the clamor of the people. Maduro also said he intends to create a unified exchange rate across the country. The new petro to dollar to bolivar rate would bring the official price of 1.6 million. What? Or 60 nation, the current. So the official US 60 to 1 of the bolivar in this new exchange, petro exchange rate. Is the current black market exchange rate and about 25 times worse than the official rate. Yeah, so using the old what Venezuela was using yesterday for money, it was $1 to 6, and now it's all of a sudden changed to 60. What could possibly go wrong? Plan. So here's some details on how they're going to do this. How physical currency wise. To implement this bizarre plan, Information Minister said Saturday that the government will open 300 currency exchange kiosks in hotel shopping malls as part of a bid to supersede the country's black market. That the central bank will increase the frequency of weekly foreign exchange auctions to 3 and eventually 5. I still don't understand how the people throughout Venezuela are going to use their old money. There's a brief look in on the inflation rate, it looks like, in Venezuela. It's kind of not the kind of graph you want to see when you're talking about prices, basically. The announcement led to even more confusion within Venezuela. On Saturday, shoppers arrived in an eastern Caracas supermarket to stock up on goods before prices rise even further. And we talked about this on Saturday morning, about the big rush on everything because people weren't sure what was going to happen today. As they rushed the supermarket to stock up, a security guard shooed them away. "The supermarket is now closed." This is a quote. "The shelves are almost empty because of the number of people who came early today," the guard said, identifying himself only as Luis. Some gas stations were closed and others had long lines. Other than the minimum wage, which if you didn't catch it earlier, they raised the minimum wage to $30 an hour in U.S. terms. I'm sorry, 30 of the new currency, right? Maduro also raised the value-added tax on luxury items to 16% from 12% and said a tax on financial transactions would range from 0 to 2%. Is government income really the issue here? Does the government really need more money? Is that what's going to solve this? Tax them more. Make their money worthless and tax them more. Venezuela is now also in default more than $6 billion on its bonds after the government missed a principal payment on one of its bonds for the first time this week. The missed payment, while hardly a surprise for investors, confirmed that creditors are unlikely to get much, if any, of their money as the overdue payments pile up with no resolution in sight for Venezuela's collapsing economy. Cryptocurrency pegged Bolivar notwithstanding. Right on. All right, folks, that's about as much rundown as I can give on Venezuela. We'll get more news today, I'm sure, as the situation develops over this new revaluation, which is equivalent of the million Zimbabwe note. That's pretty infamous. So he just wanted to avoid that infamy and just took the zeros off. So it's about the same value as those Zimbabwe $2 million notes, if not worse. So there is that. Hey, everybody, thanks for checking in. We are running late here, so I'm going to cut it. Thanks, Walter Davis, checking in with us. Angel R slid in here at the very end. Make sure you rewind, Angel. So petrolizing is actually in the dictionary. Okay, I had no idea. Who would know, right? I didn't know. It's a kind of an odd word, you'd have to admit. Petrolizing. Right. All right. Hey, thanks for checking in, Angel. All right, folks, have a good day. Hey, Barry Wood was also with us. Don't want to leave you out. We'll check back in with you on this on Wednesday morning if you want to. If you're around, come back and see us. We'll be out and about. We'll talk to y'all later. Live free.